Awesome. So the Power of Systems Book Club Call One, chapters one, two, and three. Um, what I'm going to do for this week, I'm happy to start us off, and then we'll basically just go from there. And what I'll do in future weeks is I will hand over the starting spot to anyone who wants to set a direction for each call. But I'm happy to jump in for this first call. I thought that I've made note and that there's a lot of jumping off points. So I'm going to go with the one that is most present in my mind at the moment. Um, I found the first few chapters of this book quite challenging and quite provocative, actually, as well. I've read in other Steve Chandler books, like Crazy Good, for example. He's sort of made references or jokes around the sort of psychology world, or he's mentioned psychologists quite a few times. So before I read this book, I was catching these little glimpses into what I have put together as his opinion on that world. And I was wondering, it's like, what does this guy really think of that world? Um, and then I read this book, and then the first few chapters were, at least on the first reading, perhaps through what became quite a defensive mindset of mine, I started to wonder, like, is he going in on that world? Is this sort of a this thing versus this thing? Um, and I suppose I initially found it quite provocative, because I've done so much work in, I guess, what he would call the paradigm of mind and seeing psychologists or doing therapeutic, more like traditional therapeutic model work. Um, and I thought, well, no, but it has helped. It's been really important, like, all of this stuff. Um, and I've read it again today. I'll be honest. And I've read it really differently this time around. And what I've written here is these first few chapters are it seems to be offering, like, what is the most effective route or access to action in your life. And what they're offering is systems. And so it made me wonder, like, the first time around, did I read it from a defensive point of view of sort of, I was creating kind of an either or like a, coaching world or systems world versus therapeutic world, whatever. Um, and I read it this time and I thought, well, it all depends on what the objective is. What is the thing that you're trying to do? And I wrote, action versus processing. Is your objective to get into action? And are you, as a human being, in a place mentally where the main objective is like, I want to make shit happen in my life. There's things I want to create. There's things I want to do, and I need to make it workable. And then from that perspective, I thought, well, yeah, that does make a lot of sense if that's the objective. And then on the other side, perhaps, is the objective that perhaps you're more in a place where it's more important to do some processing. I thought a lot about, I've heard some perhaps more extreme opinions where, um, some people think, well, you don't need to go to the past at all. And the jury's out for me on that one. I'm not really sure. I have, and it looks like it's been helpful to me. And I'm also aware, um, Steve Chandler's kind of painting the going deep into the mind, deep into the why, as this kind of um, murky place where it's all dependent on memories and feelings, etc. And I can also see, and I think I've also experienced getting lost in that place and becoming so not present, so not grounded in now, and very, very deep in my mind. Um, that feels complete for now. Yeah. Yeah, I think these initial chapters, it all depends on what the objective is. And is this about getting like creating the most direct line into effective action as possible? And I'd love to hear any thoughts. Karen.
Your microphone's muted.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to unmute on a phone. Does anyone know if I can unmute from?
There you go. It's
Oh, you're
stupid.
good.
I had to swipe it up, and when I swiped it up, the whole thing disappeared. I'm rubbish on this bloody phone. Apologies. I've got to drive later, which is why I'm sort of right. So I I was interested because for those of you who don't know, I started off as a therapist and then went to coaching, and then I've just merged the whole lot. And yeah, I found the same thing about like the psychology. First of all, it was like a boo psychologist. Boo, you know nothing. You're wrong. And then there was something that he said which made me think is coming at it from a different angle. It's like pop psychology or untrained psychology. So it's when we're trying to make sense of something rather than a psychiatrist who is dealing with a very real mental problem. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the self, the amateur psychology that we all cannot help but fall into because we're human. And so, what I liked about that, because even though it comes from the opposite end, is there are times we just can't stop making up stories about it and meaning for everything. And it's just saying, like, but that's not going to land the plane. Agonizing over the controls and stuff, that's not going to land the plane. There's a system for landing the plane. You just tweak all the things and do all the things, and the plane will land, regardless of the last time you landed, it went really well, went really badly. How long you've been flying, none of that. If you follow the system, the plane will land. So that's what I took from that side of it, that there are going to be times when, for example, trauma cases, you have to deal with acknowledging and releasing, even though it's not happening anymore because it is keeping on replaying. But most of the stuff that we're dealing with, and let's face it, the things that can be dealt with by implementing systems, which is a successful way of living, it really doesn't matter what your excuses are. And I use that term lovingly, but what your excuses are, the why doesn't matter. The why is just going to reinforce your story of why you're not doing it and give you a way out. When really it's what I think is wonderful is how much simpler it is when we realize that we're not doing it because we're crap or we're rubbish, but because we just got the wrong system and we didn't know we had a system, and now we can do something about it. It's not about us. And then we don't get lost. Then we can do something about it and prove whether or not it works. And I love there was a bit at the back, in chapter 3, where it says something like, you have the freedom to change a system that you don't like, which I really liked because that takes all the pressure off to make it perfect first time. And that's all I got to say about that.
I really liked what you were pointing to with the story thing, and I think I learned this term from I first heard you say this the term like we are meaning making machines. We create an enormous amount of meaning and story, and particularly around why certain things are or are not working or happening in our lives the way that we would like them to, and it really looks true that the first port of call, or almost the default place to go to, is some personal deficiency. Like we personalize the problem really, really quickly, and therefore, like that in itself is an act of making a meaning, of creating a story around the thing. So this thing isn't working or happening, that therefore and they point to this a lot in this chapter. Get effectively getting away from I, me, myself, kind of thinking about yourself a lot in a way, and often not in a particularly nice way, often in a very critical way. I'm not getting this done because I don't believe in myself enough, or I lack the confidence, or I'm not disciplined enough, or I couldn't possibly because any sort of iteration of that thing we often and don't get me wrong, like, I'm not speaking this from a place of like I've mastered this thing. I catch myself on an almost daily basis making this thing, but at least by reading the book, I'm able to go, oh, you're doing that thing. You're making this thing mean something about you, or you're personalizing a problem, as opposed to, I think the depersonalizing that's on offer when you work with systems. So it's actually probably just down to this thing, and it might need a bit of a tweak. Um, so yeah, thank you for pointing at that, Chris.
Hello, my friends. Great to see all of you. Hi, Lyndon. Nice to meet you. Um, yeah, this will be my second trip through this book, and this book really shook things up for me. My suspicion is that creatives, and I'm not just referring to professional creatives, I'm referring to any human being that is in some way in touch with their own creativity, even if that's a system they don't even know is running. They are used to sort of living by their wits, improvising their way through situations. I think anyone whose brain is wired that way, I think for those of us, I think we're more susceptible to overthinking, scanning for patterns, asking why, trying to make meaning out of some things that there might be no meaning to be made. It's something that, if it's something that sticks with us, it could have been just a thing that happened, and yet we we like to, we feel like we have to create a story around it so we can make sense of it. And so that has certainly been my my tendency, my habit. But what I love in these first couple of chapters here is that he talks about the difference, as I would explain it. He looks at why. We want to know why, and in all of that, we forget to look or even think of, well, what now? So busy ruminating or trying to understand why a thing happened, why people are the way they are, why the world is the way it is, or circumstances in our life aren't pleasing to us. Yeah, we could sit in that place, or we could just decide, well, as he, as we get through this book too, to say, well, what if we just sort of take the leverage away from from all the whys, and start to think about what next? What what is one big system that we can put into place, and then inherent in that, there are going to be subsystems. So the easiest analogy is um really, really convenient analogy, going to the gym, if that's your thing. I don't want to go to the gym. Well, what if you just take your clothes out and put them by the door, put them on the bed, put them somewhere you'll see them? What if you just put them on and you don't leave the house? What if you put them on and you go to the car, until we find ourselves in the gym doing the thing, and even having fun and enjoying the whole experience, but we didn't have to deal with all of that at once. It's like system one: take your clothes out, take your shoes out, put them somewhere where you're gonna notice them, and it's gonna trigger the next system, engage that next system. So, um, but I love the emphasis here on depersonalization, and I'm glad for the clarity as we get into it, that when we talk about psychologists, Karen, you of course spoke to this, but I think he uses the term psychologist, but I think in that we are also including uh, therapists, and that movement wherein we are, you have sitting with someone else to work with the mind from a certain place, as opposed to just a doctor of psychology. Because obviously there are differences between psychologists, therapists, psychiatrists, but if I'm right, and correct me if not, we can just take therapists and for the purposes of understanding this book, lump them in with the psychologists. Would you say that's a fair statement, everybody?
That was what my mind went to when I read the book.
Yeah. And he does draw that distinction about pop psychology, and some clickbait article or a YouTube video or a reel that gives us a quick fix to something that offers a quick fix to something that's more the pop psychology side of things. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for emphasizing the why, because they brought that up a lot. I once heard it put, what why is a search engine for story? It can be a creative playground. There are inherent meanings to things, but it's a useful question, and it's really useful to know how to not get tangled up in it. It can be easy to enter speculation where you're like, well, I don't know, you do a gig and then you do a couple more and then they never call you back. It's like in that instance, for example, how useful is it to ruminate on why for a long period of time? If you've not been given an explicit reason, if it's just been a no more phone calls after a certain point, there can be a level of torture that can come with sitting with why and speculating or going back over memories of, could it have been that thing that I did? Could it have been that thing? Was it that time on that gig that thing didn't work? And or maybe when I broke the string and they were, it could be any iteration, and before you know it, again, you're very not present, very not grounded, very deep in your own mind. And then I struggle to see how at any point that could settle down, because there are infinite iterations when you're speculating on something like a situation like that. There are infinite possibilities of creating whatever story and whatever iteration of that. So that doesn't look like a very effective route to settling something or moving on from something. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for pointing at the why. And yeah, I heard you say the what now, and I wrote earlier actually, like, why versus what I think is really being offered here. I'm really interested actually. I noticed Sophie your hand, Philip your hand, but a quick question out to everyone. I wasn't totally clear on what he was getting at when he was drawing the amateur psychology distinction. And Karen and Chris, you've both shared a bit of a thing, but I'd be really curious to hear what everyone made of that, because I could see that there was a distinction he was making there, and I wasn't totally clear at the time of reading, like what is he pointing to? So maybe for this, we'll go back to the hands, but if anyone wants to just unmute and share their perspective on that one. Yes.
So my perspective is that you can't unriddle your story from being in the story. And there was that lovely quote somewhere in here about, shining the light. You can't get rid of the darkness by going into the darkness. You need to shine the light of truth, or whatever. It was much better said than that. But it's that same thing of, like the dressing gown hanging up, and like going into why is that? Somebody's in my room, you wake up, someone's in your room, what are you going to do about it? Why are they here? All of that is irrelevant when you realize that actually there's no one in the room, it's your dressing gown hanging on the door. So I think he's saying that this is coming from another perspective, a completely different thing. Like, there is no point agonizing over what you're going to do next about this mythical thing that doesn't exist, when all you need to do is to recognize that you don't have to deal with that. Does that make it made sense to me? But then I in my mind.
Yeah, you can't unriddle. I can't remember the exact words you said, but you said words that made a lot of sense to me around, effectively being the experiencer of your own emotional state, your own thoughts, etc., and trying to effectively unfuck yourself from within that. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Before we go around, did anyone else specifically want to speak to that point?
I think I had like at a basic level, I interpreted that as we're talking about amateur versus, I don't know, whatever other category of psychology. It's mainly kind of talking, for me, it kind of rang a bell with the type of like psychology that can occur during coaching, specifically sessions, and in my experience of coaching and being coached, it's easy to have this sort of approach where you do get pulled into it by a client, or you as a client kind of want to go down this route because it's easy to sort of yap and delve um, in such a way that isn't necessarily like the same as a proper like structured therapeutic session that might be prescribed for. I mean, there's a difference. I think it's like what you were saying before with talking about the objectives. I think the first time I read this book, I sort of read the first few chapters and I was like, oh, is this kind of a like? I had a sort of inkling that it might be going in a kind of pseudoscientific direction, sort of trying to scrub out the any use that can be found in kind of clinical therapy or something. But I think coming back to it, it is like, okay, if the main thing you're looking to get out of this is out of coaching or whatever is changing the way you're living your life, the what, if it was what you're doing, changing what you're doing, achieving what you want to achieve, the actions you want to achieve, then that sort of the amateur psychology thing is just this tendency, and I think it is an easy thing to do, like although it can be, I guess, emotionally challenging, it's an easy thing to do to sort of lead your way down this path that is not really the same as what you would find in a clinical psychology or whatever session that is more designed to deal with what might be considered the kind of thing you find in the DSM-5 or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. That was my interpretation.
Thanks. Yeah, that awesome. I think that's cleared. I'm a lot clearer on that. It's made me think, well, who is this book written for ultimately? This is written for the reasonably well. It's people who are picking this up who are in a place where there is enough mental stability in their life and a degree of positive mental health where it's like, yeah, okay, well, systems, awesome. I want to do shit and make shit happen, and this isn't a clinical emergency. We're not. It's not, someone with paranoid schizophrenia being treated. I wouldn't
Yeah,
hand.
it kind of deals with frustration rather than crisis.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Wise words, man. Awesome. Wicked. Sophie.
Hi everyone. So this, I mean, it is kind of my first time reading this book. I read the first like quarter of this book maybe 6 months to a year ago, and then didn't finish it. So that's kind of partly why I'm here in this book club to actually give me some accountability to read the damn book and talk about it with like-minded people. But in that time, in the meantime, I've been reading another book called The Power of Now, which obviously Will, you recommended to me. And I think it's really interesting coming back to these first few chapters where I, again, like a few of you have said, like I remember reading this and going, all right, fuck off. Like, what do you mean? Like in some of the stuff that they were saying about, psychologists and all that sort of stuff. But I think something when I was reading it again earlier today really stood out to me. And it was about when they were saying about going to AA and doing just the one day at a time thing. And there's a quote here that says, "Forget the past and forget the future. Today is the only day you'll ever live in, so it's where we access the system." And I just had this sudden like moment because that is very the power of now coded. In fact, I've got a couple of quotes from that one as well about like the pain body like and the ego and how much that feeds into your kind of narratives and your sense of self and how that kind of informs you, because I've been to going to a therapist for years, and I think that in my mind those whys felt was like, but those feel really important because I have to analyze every part of me in the past and stuff. But actually, um yeah, what was this quote? This is from The Power of Now, this quote. "This is why, for so many people, a large part of their sense of self is intimately connected with their problems. Once this has happened, the last thing they want is to become free of them. That would mean loss of self." And I think I just suddenly had this realization of like, oh, like having a system and being kind of pragmatic is kind of the same as that, like not living in the past, not living in the future, not like kind of being unconscious, if you will, and living in kind of the ego headspace, but trying to be present. It all kind of connects together. Yeah, that's enough of my wanky nonsense. Thank you. Back to you guys.
Wanky nonsense is not how I would have chosen to describe it. Um, that was so awesome. And yeah, I love the energy you've shared that with. And I'm so glad you've pointed to the power of now. And actually, I'm pretty sure this must have been intentional. Later on in the book, this does get into that, really into that territory. And they quite cheekily have a chapter and they say this chapter should have been called The Power of Now. So I think there's a real nod to that. So I'm really glad that in the first call you've made the connection between the two because it is massive, and there is a connection. Um, and I was going to say more, and I'm too excited, so I forget all of the words have left my mind. But yeah, thank you for that. If it comes back, I'll share again. Philip.
Hello. I'm not sure if the prompt is sort of more or less sort of what I got from these chapters, right? So I also started reading the book Atomic Habits. It's kind of funny how Sophie you're also overlapping with another book, um, and I'm kind of I'm kind of getting to the point where I realize like I think like I'm calling myself out on my bullshit. Like if I'm like oh yeah, I want to do this thing, I want to do this thing, or like I don't know, I'm gonna tidy my room today or something, or I'm gonna I don't know, I'm gonna sort that out. I'm gonna do that today, and then like a week goes past and I haven't done it. Like we kind of have these blind spots where we kind of say that we're gonna do stuff, but we don't always necessarily do it. It's kind of again back to the quick conversation about integrity. Um, and I think that's kind of where I'm positioning it. Like in terms of building systems. I mean, I'm overlapping a lot from Atomic Habits, but I think it's going to be super relevant to this. It's like something as simple as like environmental design. Like if you've got, I don't know, your phone in your room and it's got your social media app, and then you pick it up and you sit down, you're going to scroll for like an hour and the time is going to go past. If you, for example, delete the app, put the phone in the other room, and in its place you put like a book, or I've got my musical instruments in front of me, so that means that every day I'm just picking up my musical instruments and practicing. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I see this kind of the psychology of you can sometimes really I feel like you can just really go into overthinking and over analyzing, and if you don't have somebody that's actually just going to critically point out like you're making excuses for yourself and you're just over analyzing and overthinking and just going really deep into stuff that doesn't really make sense, and you're talking about the stuff that I feel that within myself. Obviously there's some level of it that's kind of important and does make sense, but there's some part of it's like mate, get up and do the thing, like stop talking about it, just do it, kind of thing. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about systems. It's like create a system that's actually going to work, actually get things done.
What you've implicitly pointed to there is the subtractive process. So, like, brilliant
Mm.
mastery is the absence of unnecessary thinking, or is certainly facilitated by the absence of unnecessary thinking. You can't think your way to main stage at a festival. Just as much as like on a smaller scale, you can't think yourself into, you know, getting into the kitchen and making breakfast. It's not so. All of these things require certain degrees of action. They require systems in place that support that level of growth. And as anything grows, then the systems need to change and need to be tweaked. Um, but the absence of that unnecessary thinking clears the pathway. Um, so yeah, thanks for pointing to that. And again, that doesn't start with the addition of anything. It begins with the subtraction of something. It's like, well, if like you're saying, stop thinking about the thing, and well, what systems are going to support this? Like you mentioned integrity, for example. So integrity being, and I want to check we're on the same page here. Integrity being that words and actions align, like what I say I'm going to do and what I'm actually
Yeah,
doing. Like once that's in place, then
think from the art.
sorry.
I think my internet's a little bit slow. I said the thing from the article, the integrity article, that talks about yeah, exactly, aligning your words and your actions.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. So then, okay, what systems could support that thing? And then it becomes a really creative thing. It becomes even a fun thing. It's like, well, reverse engineer. I want a greater level of alignment between words and actions in my life. Okay, what systems could support that, and could encourage that consistency?
Can I give one really cool example around the what systems can actually support this?
Please.
Again, it's from Atomic Habits, but I just found this was so playful. So there was a guy who was working as a salesperson in some business, can't remember, whatever. And every day, his objective was to make 120 calls, sales calls, to reach out to new clients. And every day at the beginning of the day, he'd put two jars on his table, and one jar had 120 paper clips. And for every call that he'd do, he'd take one paper clip and put it into the other jar. And just the physical act that like that's a micro little dopamine of moving the paper clip would feel like, oh look, well the I'm doing the calls, the paper clips are moving, and now there's more, and now this one's empty, and now all the paper clips are in here. Um, Creating micro systems like that that's going to incentivize you to do the thing that you want to do, rather than self-flagellation for beating yourself up for not doing the thing that you want to do. For me, it's around, for example, musical practice, and the systems that I'm doing recently. I'm just playing my pieces that I really enjoy playing and improving my repertoire. So there you go. Will, can't hear you.
Amazing. Thank you. I've written down here get gamifying and reduction. So like creating a game out of something. We've seen this before with Crazy Good. I can't remember the shame versus game. So and you said there like self-flagellating, like that's a thing. I'm sure we've all been there. It can almost even be like fairly effective if we're talking incredibly short term, never a long-term solution, and never pleasant. But to create a game out of something, but also to reduce something like, okay, well, 120 sales calls in a day, that could be heavy, especially if it's cold calls, and especially if you're getting a lot of no's, one after the other, if not worse. But reducing that physically to the moving of paper clips from one jar to the other, there's something in that that's like, well, wow, right, you've reduced this thing down. And we're going on a bit of a tangent. No, we're not going on a tangent. It all relates. I'd love to share a system I've got at the moment for fear. So my coach is, we've talked about fear and where it shows up, which is in a lot of places in my life, and the ways in which it holds me back. And then of course eventually after a couple of calls, it's, well, we could keep talking about fear, or we could put a system in place and do some things. And for the last couple of weeks, the system has been, there's a notepad right down here, and it's easy to tear the pages out. Every time I do something in a day that scares me, or that I feel fear around, or I feel an imposter in that situation, I write it down. And at the end of every day, I tear it off and put it in a jar. And there's kind of a game in that system of reducing something fearful or something that I feel scared of to a piece of scrap paper in a jar that I physically have ownership of. And then it becomes this game that whole system is now reducing fear to like, oh, well, I want to collect it. I want to have that in the jar by the end of the day. So I'm gonna do the thing even though I'm scared of it. So thanks for pointing to that, Philip, because I think a really cool part of how we can create these calls is also sharing how we're actually using this stuff and what systems we're creating week in and week out, and then people can go and get some inspiration and go and play with stuff. So thank you. Chris.
Power of Now and Atomic Habits. Yes, 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 yes. I think those microsystems I referred to earlier, isn't that what James Clear refers to as habit stacking? Right? You know, getting in the habit of pulling your shoes out, getting the habit of putting them on, et cetera, et cetera. And there's one thing I wanted to bring up before, since Steve Sandler comes from, well, he opens it as with his story of addiction. And it's interesting to me that he manages to hold in balance the messages that come with 12-step programs and this whole idea which are very personal, and which in my experience have a lot to do with people seeing themselves as broken, imperfect, flawed, prone to stumble, fall back. So he obviously went through all that in his 12-step program. I'm sure that was part of it. But yet, so that's all very personal. But now this idea that he could then turn to this concept of systems and depersonalizing that experience. To me, there's a tension there that I'm again, I'm interested to see and be as we go through the book again to read how he balances this out. There's a person in my family who has struggled with substances in the past and very much sees herself as broken. And I read this when I read this book, I thought, oh, this will be perfect because he has, she has this in common with the author. They both, he speaks the 12-step language, so perhaps she'll find something that's useful in this. But I realized that I think it just personality obviously plays a role, but she's not quite ready to let go yet, even though I know she's at least gone through some of this book, but she's not quite ready to let go of that idea that it is about me, that it is personal, that I am a broken person, and I just can't do this or this or this, and I have to rely on something outside of myself. Uh, and I don't judge. I mean, please hear me clearly. I think people should find healing wherever they can. So I don't have an issue there. But this is, I thought this book would move the needle more towards the center for her, and it has not. And so I wonder about what you all, I'd be curious to hear what anyone else has to say um, on that topic, because I'm if anything, just looking for more ways to support my family member, and maybe a new way of getting her to return to this book and seeing that, like, well, you know, somewhere in all of this is the truth for you, as it will work, but it doesn't necessarily require you um, to ignore all that's come before and adopt this completely new approach, and everything is going to be fine because you can just turn on a dime like that. Um, I would like to be able to see her more clearly when we're in conversation about this together. So I'm open if anyone has anything to say about that. Thank you.
I really want to underline something there. Thank you, Chris, for sharing really openly, and about, people that you have relationships with, and also stating your intention of, like, well, I'm open to this, and then effectively asking the group for input and help. Um, Thank you for role modeling that, and that's exactly, um, if people are comfortable, how we can create this space as a mutual support, as a place where we can come to get guidance, to get advice, to get opinions, to get help and support from this group of people. So I yeah, before getting into it, I really want to underline that.
Thank you. And I just want to make it clear, I'm not asking for anyone to share their own personal stories as such, or to go that, but I mean, I just wonder if anyone else sees that or has any experience similar to mine with people that they know, but sees this little bit of a rub between perhaps the the um, the approach of traditional 12-step programs and this new way of addressing those same issues. That's all. So thank you.
Mm. Can I clarify something? Um, I think I'm hearing you right. I just want to double check. Is the rub that you're seeing there the um, personalization slash identification with, um, I am broken, I am dot dot dot, that some level of identification with, versus the depersonalization of systems. This is a systems thing and not a you thing. Is that the rub that you're seeing there?
Well, yeah. So the language that my family member uses all the time is, I have a disease. I have the disease. I have the gene. They love to say that. Not just this particular family member, but others in my family. I heard this all the time growing up within my relatives. You shouldn't drink. You got the gene, meaning, yeah, I have a fundamental genetic flaw. That means that if I did this or this or this, I'm prone to then becoming dependent on a substance or a relationship. I mean, it can manifest in different ways. I'm using substance here because it's easy. And so that is, to me, that to me seems a bit of like a disempowerment, as opposed to, well, what he says is, um, let's be here today. Let's make a decision today. Let's not worry about, let's not add all those other layers. Let's just, and he says I think in response, he even says, well, I can do that. I can do today. I can be in the now. And so that is, to me, empowering. So that's where I see that there's maybe like, I'm trying to figure out what the relationship is between those two. One is a system. We'll just say like the 12-step system, and um, um, and Chandler's sort of answer to that, which is depersonalizing. Look for, reverse, like you said before, reverse engineer. Let's go back to the system or the habit. What habit do we have that's unlocking everything else and sending us down this direction we don't want to go? Because we do have the power today, in this moment, to change that and make a different decision, and to remove all the other layers of story that we are so prone to add on. So is that a sufficient answer?
That makes perfect sense. And I wrote down here the disease. I have the disease.
Yeah.
I guess there's a preface to this. I've never gone through the 12-step program. I've known
Nor have I. To be clear.
well who has. So I will speak with effectively secondhand knowledge, and I'll speak from the best picture that I've built, just effectively what I know, which is not a lived experience. So I just want to, put that up there. There are parallels, and Steve in this book, he mentions genes as well. And I think I think of conversations not with substance, but particularly with prone to depression. Within my family, there's been the talk of, well, you have got the genes. I think at one point someone even said, well, I think you've got some bad genes from the Greek side. And that brought in a whole other, level of conversation to it. And of course, I think hearing that when I was younger, it was like, well, that's a fucking done deal then, isn't it? It's like if that's the paradigm I'm going to live in, it's like, oh, it's in your genes, this is the and what is meant. I'm always curious, like what do people mean by that? What the future's inevitable, that a certain thing is inevitable because it's coded into you. That doesn't look true to me. And I'm not a geneticist, and I don't pretend to really. We need my sister in on this call because she loves all that stuff. But I don't know, that doesn't ring with me. And then in terms of the language used around I am or I have, I am is, well, I identify with this thing, and I have is, well, this is something I own. This is something I have possession over. Or this is something that's an innate part of me. So, I am broken, or I am genetically flawed, or I have the disease. All of that language certainly points to someone that my guess would be can't how do I put this into words? can't think of themselves without that thing, whatever that thing is, in the picture.
Mhm. That's what we were talking about before. People not wanting to have their problems taken away from them because they have so thoroughly invested themselves in this idea that that's who they are. And yes, that I know very well. That tendency to, so um,
That was the first thing I thought of, was what Sophie mentioned earlier, that egoic place of, well,
yeah,
rid of the problem, you get rid of a whole bunch of identity that's attached
yeah.
to it. Well,
Hmm.
hmm.
Hmm. It seems to me I'll say the last thing. I don't want to monopolize our call. The last thing that comes to mind as you're speaking, Will, is that, and in light of everything that's been said so far, is that that decision in a single moment on a day to say, um, let me step back and view the thought or the habit or the behavior, and that one that one um, tiny bit of remove from it, then we peel back and we into the witness perspective and can look at it and say, okay, instead of I am, it is I have or I do, I tend to. Um, but that does not, but that does not mean that I'm an automaton. I don't. I cannot act. I can. I don't have to be by default just reactive and following every last thought, emotion, any habit that doesn't serve me, whatever it is. So I think that's all to what that is what the power of now is about. That's that whole book. You know, open the gap there, just get a little bit of daylight in there, and see the difference between the thinker and the thought.
Right. Right. Well, maybe that's what I'm wondering there. Maybe that's the book for your relative to get into as well. The Power of Now.
Yeah, I think
Awesome.
I've given it to her already, actually. So we'll keep, we'll just keep going.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any more that anyone wants to share? Anything that jumped out for anyone? Any gold that anyone found from these chapters that they
I
wanna
think, yeah, kind of coming back to it, having read the book a while ago, um, I think like it's the main thing, the main kind of foundational thing that I think is so useful about this is that element of depersonalization, um, and moving from a kind of position of, oh, of that shame in oneself and that kind of self narrativization to this moving from that digging in to the mind into that, like it's the fact that it's so depersonalized to do this like systems analysis. Like it's not like it's my systems that are broken, not me, or my systems that aren't working. But like I don't know, yeah, I think it's really interesting that you bring up the example of that. I think it's one of the first steps, isn't it, in the 12 steps? I'm not that familiar with it, but the like acceptance or acknowledgement, I guess acknowledgement, the I am an alcoholic, or I have this disease or whatever, which I think I could see that being useful for some people as a way to, as almost another, like, even though it is kind of a personalized statement, kind of grammatically by definition, as a way to kind of create almost a barrier against the shame. Like, okay, this is this, or I have this. Um,
Mm.
and once you've, and that kind of pushes you from a place of kind of this chaos of uncertainty, I guess, of what you're doing and where these actions are coming from, to then kind of ground you in this place of certainty, and then be like, okay, well, this is I have this, and I can work from this. And I could see that maybe being useful for some people. It is something that I've kind of heard in like the 12 steps or something, and in the 12 steps previously, and thought that like it's not. I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but it has always felt a little bit like it could be problematic, especially I think for people who then find it very difficult to move beyond that, or
Mm.
find that as a grounding center of their personality rather than a part of the terrain that they then have to work with. Um, but yeah, I know for me, the I think the most useful part of this, like the most foundational useful part of this book, was that it kind of gave permission to look and identify the shame that often comes with having systems that aren't working and being in this sort of drifting place that kind of occurs from having all of these approaches that aren't really getting you anywhere, and then giving you permission instead of, or giving you a tool instead of dwelling in that, to be like, okay, this like I can engage in this very in the analysis of the systems regarding instead of the analysis of myself. Um, and yeah, that's I don't know, that's all I have to say really.
Hmm. I love that. What since having that shift away from, I think you said, dwelling in self-analysis versus immersing in systems. What have been the practical applications for you, or like what have you created from that?
I think that's I think it's part of why I wanted to come on this course, is that I think I still got a lot of application left to do. But in like the sort of in the fucking instant realm of it, I think a kind of post sort of working with this book a little bit, I do feel a less of a pervasive sense of sort of frustration and not really so much self-loathing, just sort of self like resignation almost. And I think there are elements. While it hasn't been like, it hasn't so far been like a silver bullet that is like immediately kind of come in and like given me these tools right from the get-go to sort out all of the sort of lacking or broken elements or systems that I've been like kind of dragging around for years. It has, in the kind of couple of months since I read it, made me feel a little bit more easygoing about them, and I guess sort of given a sense of hope that, okay, well, now I can see how I would, like what I can do. Like it's given a roadmap. Whether or not I followed that roadmap is a different matter, or the extent to which I have, but it feels doable now rather than like, I think having that innate like prescription of something to you makes it feel very, very difficult to surmount. Because I don't know, I can think about how to change a system. I can't really think about how to like innately change myself. That's like those are two very different like mountains to climb, I guess.
Awesome. Awesome. So you've got a roadmap, and now it's the consistent application, which will also fall back on systems, funnily enough. Um, Okay, wicked. One thing I will say, and actually I'll put this out. So there's no immediate rush with this. The questionnaires I emailed out, they are definitely more for your benefit. I want to read them because I'm curious. So there's no immediate rush. I think one of the final, or maybe the final question of that was around outcomes. Like what would, at the end of this 15 weeks, if this was 15 weeks really fucking well spent, what would that look like? What would be the things that you're creating or have created in that time? So yeah, have a look at that, and particularly that question. And maybe that'll be, that made me think what you were saying there, Lyndon, that you can see a roadmap, you feel a lot more easy going on yourself, and now, okay, what are the things and how are the things going to be done? that final question on the questionnaire will be really helpful for that. Awesome. All right, Karen.
So, oh my gosh. Well, I wanted to say something earlier, but I was driving. So I did, I don't know the 12-step program, but I did a course. It's a Russell Brand course on the 12-step program. And I thought, well, do you know what? He's probably just as much of an expert on it as anyone else because it worked for him. So I went through it. He talked us through it, and you can apply it to different elements of your life. And obviously, the first one is the standing up and acknowledging. And I think that's, you know, when we were talking before in Crazy Good, it's a lot of it's just noticing, isn't it? Oh, I'm doing this. It's not labeling yourself as the thing that you're doing, but noticing that you're just doing that. And like when I trained as a therapist, we were taught, like, say for anorexia, you're not an anorexic, you're somebody who displays anorexic behavior. So to separate your problems from your identity. So that's I I don't like in that way standing up and saying, "Oh, I'm Karen and I'm an alcoholic." I suppose it's useful if you've been in denial for ages about it and you finally, and now I can do it. And but by the very nature of you going to this, you've already seen, you know, it's as though people never leave a sinking ship unless they see the light of another ship approaching. They've already got to that point. They know there's hope. They're acknowledging that this is where they've been up until now, and now what? And there was something else I was going to say. Now it's gone out of my head. Oh, yeah, like, so I had to go to Brighton yesterday. Sorry I didn't see you, Will. um I'd arranged to meet someone else, and I went to the church because it's right by where Soph dances and I love it there. And the sermon was on worship, and it said you're always worshipping something. And I was thinking, oh, it's just like systems. There's always a system. You're either, you know, this isn't a religious thing that I'm saying, but, you know, you're either worshipping God or you're worshipping your need for food or you're worshipping your need for a career progression or whatever. There's always something that you're worshipping, that you're putting front and center in your life. And just to notice that you're doing that, and it's just, oh, I'm doing that. Like, oh, I'm putting lying in ahead of going to the gym. I'm just choosing that over that. Oh, it's just a choice. Doesn't say anything about me. And to notice your current commitments and worshipping, and then have the freedom to change it. Because this book is like the light, you know, it's that we're over here. It's all right. We've got you. There is just so much lightness in knowing that you can just change, that you're not set in stone. And the more we start doing the micro commitments, the more we have a different opinion of ourselves and a belief in our own, you know, capacities and abilities. And then the prover proves and the thinker thinks, and, you know, you get this feedback loop. And before you know it, those little things and the non-negotiables in life, aren't they? Like I said before, like, I don't have to think about cleaning my teeth. It's something that I just do. I don't have, you know, it's like, oh no, must I? No, yeah, just do it. Like, don't, that's what I want at the end of it, to just have the things in my life that are important to me just be done with no emotion, no thinking about it. Just, oh, and now I do this, and now I do that. And I don't see that as a really boring, mundane thing. I see that as a liberating, constant refocus on what's important to me in my precious life that I have wasted a shit ton of time on. You know, like, I've just wasted loads of time, you know, waiting for the right moment and navel gazing and, you know, relaxing. But I haven't been relaxing. I've been sitting still and going, oh, should be doing this. You should be, you know, it's just like we don't have to do that. that's what I want. I want to just have the meanness and the thought taken out so that I can just do the thing. And then the thinking about the thing, which is the thing that normally weighs the heaviest, because very rarely is the doing the thing as bad as you think it's going to be. And then, ta-da, happened.
Mm. This is brought up a bit again from The Power of Now, where Eckhart is talking about um, discerning or asking yourself the question like, how useful is this? Is this useful, this thought, or is this not useful? And learning, it's like, and there's never going to be an absence of thought. We're always going to think, but we can question how useful the thinking is in any given moment. And in that way, I think we can learn to use thought at its most useful, which is ultimately as a tool. It's a fantastic problem solving thing. It's a fantastic creative thing. It's a brilliant tool. And when it becomes a brick wall to doing things, like like the picture you just described there of sitting around sort of waiting, umming and ahhing, wondering if you should, is it the right time, negotiating with it, talking yourself out of it. That's the moment. It's like, okay, how useful is the thinking here? Am I using thinking as a tool here, or am I using it to create as many obstacles as possible?
And it's good to, like people do create obstacles because safety is one of our things that's like programmed into us. And we only feel safe in what we know. So, we're fighting, we're not, I don't want to use that word, but there's this human beingness in us that we can't deny that is urging us to play safe all the time. And I love the idea of the just moving the things over from one jar to another. It takes out at least that element of it you've done before. I just have to do that to that. And like statistically in sales, if you make enough calls, you'll get some yeses. Like just I don't care if the next one isn't a yes, I just need to move that over there. That's something I can do. So even if our systems are established and we get comfortable with them because they just become our way of being, then that frees us up to do the more scary things because, oh, I'm talking in circles. But do you know what I mean? That it takes that element of it out. There's some degree of safety in it, which can free us up to be creative and try new shit.
This is actually, you've raised a really cool point here, and I'll quickly talk to it and then I'll move on. I don't want you guys waiting too long. But yeah, there are people I've met. I'm like, do you live in some alternate fucking reality where there are 50 hours in your day and you don't need to sleep? Like, how are you doing all the things you're doing and getting all the things done? And what I've come to realize with these people, I think the one thing they all have in common is they have really closed the gap between idea or inspiration or, oh, that like you get a nudge from the universe and you're like, I'm going to do that thing. They've closed the gap between that and executing it. They've managed to remove almost all of the thinking about the thing, and so they seem to collapse time really quickly and are able to just be in a flow state and move through the things and not have the self-debating. And it's interesting as well. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm playing with it and I'm skeptical at the same time. So I think, well, what removing as much of that as possible, because you've rightly pointed out, so there's a safety thing in all of that as well. There's these barriers of thought, etc. It can be useful to have certain thoughts around, like, okay, what would be the best way of going about this, etc. So I guess those people, as good as they've got at closing that gap, they've also got really, really sharp at, right, that's a useful thought, that's not a useful thought. They've got really quick at discerning those as well. Mm.
Can I tell you a quick thing that I was on? It was Dave Kibbe that told me this, and I found it so useful. I just want to share it with you. So this guy got broken into his flat, and he decided he didn't want to be a victim of it. My friend had that happen. Oh, I've been violated, my safe space, had to have counselling. And he decided, like, I'm just going to not make up a story about why they came in and what their motives were and what they did when I was here. So he looked at the CCTV camera and he saw his flat door open and a guy walked out with his TV. That was it. That's actually what happened. He didn't get his precious television stolen. He didn't, like basically end of the day, he's got insurance, gets a new telly. Hooray. But that's all there was. He's just stopped it there. This is the fact of the matter. The door was open. A guy walked out with my TV. Anything beyond that, I've made up a whole story. I'm not going to be a victim of that story. So just to bring us back always to like, well, what's the fact? What would a CCTV video show of that event? That's I found that really helpful with clients as well.
Love that. Event versus interpretation. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Sophie.
I just wanted to say it's what Karen said about noticing stuff within yourself. I think that's a really interesting thing to touch on, actually, because I think all of the books that we've mentioned today kind of point towards this and encourage this, the idea of kind of just noticing these things in yourself. And I think that is all kind of very similar to, it's like a form of mindfulness, isn't it? And so then it got me thinking about back with the whole early in these chapters of the psychologist and you thinking like you and yourself thinking like all the whys of what's going wrong in your life. And it's almost like when you're looking in that past and you're looking for your whys, it's almost like you're hoping that the answer will give you this light bulb moment that will just magically fix you. And that once you figure out this why, that's it, you're fixed because you now know that this is the why and therefore I must do that. But actually, that even if you find out your why, that doesn't always work. And so I think that the kind of the like the power of now does, I think Crazy Good does a little bit as well, is that just kind of being present and that is a practice. You can't do it all the time. You'll find yourself, but if you catch yourself going down like I think this book later on says talks about the paradigm of mind, doesn't it? If you catch yourself in that paradigm of mind, to just notice it and to just sit with it, and that is that it's actually a practice. And I think that there's something really like relieving about knowing that there is no big answer, but that the answer is within you all along. Like, but my point is like there is no big answer. Like it's just about practicing this noticing and changing those habits over time. And I don't know, I find something very calming about that. That there doesn't have to be this big solution, you know? Yeah, that's all I had to say, really.
I love that. And I'm not surprised that you find something relaxing in that, because I think it moves us away from viewing ourselves as something that needs fixing. If we're noticing in ourselves, there's a degree of acceptance in that of like, well, this may always be a part of me. And so there's an acceptance and then an integration, and there's a self-love in all of that, and it's going, well, okay, I don't need to find the big fix or like finally get rid of this thing and cut this thing I hate about myself out of me. It's like, no, it's there. And when I notice it, that's cool. And when I do notice it, I don't have to really do anything about it because noticing it was cool. And then there's a choice. So, okay, I've noticed it. Am I going to continue? Or am I going to apply some of the things I've learned and try something different? So noticing and choice, it's like amazing. That I think those are the ingredients of empowerment. And it's really funny when I do noticing exercises with clients. So, we might get to the end of a call, and the task will be something around noticing. Um, and like I definitely, I think um, when I was on the receiving end of that years ago, it's like, well, what do I do once I notice it? Well, what do I do with that? Or how do I fix it? How do I fit? It was immediately like, I've noticed the thing, and then what? Come on, let's sort this thing out. And it's taken time to realize like, oh no, all I need to do is be curious and notice. Oh, I'm doing that thing. There's that people pleasing thing again. Cool. Choice. So thank you for pointing that out. I think that's huge. Philip.
Can I just say how much I'm enjoying the whole conversation? Um, Really, really nice, really enriching. Um, yeah, I feel like I kind of just want to share like really frankly kind of mm, yeah. I've been trying to like for a long time build like my piano teaching business, right? And I have like loads of things I'm trying to figure out. One of the things right now is that there's overdue bills. So like last week, I said like this week I'm just going to sort out all these overdue bills, get all of these people up to date, those people that have missed payments and just chase them up and message them. And like day after day, my task was just like sit at the computer, like get ready, do my morning routine, eat whatever, training, and I'm gonna sit down at like 12 o'clock. I'm gonna work on my computer until like 4 o'clock or something, and then I'm gonna teach. And like every day, I would just like have this massive resistance to doing it. I'd procrastinate. I'd do like a bunch of different things. By the time I actually got there, sat down, and started working, it was okay. So like 3 hours of doing this work, I just procrastinate. I'd do something else. I'd just distract myself. I'd get into conversations. I just like, and then I was like, I kind of don't actually want to be doing this. And I think the story I was telling myself was like, I don't want to be doing this actually. And then because I was thinking that, I actually made that real. And I kind of got to this point where I was like, you know what? I really want to lean into this performing thing. I played at 3 festivals this year. And rather than putting my effort into these bills and trying to do the piano lessons, blah blah blah, I'm like, why don't I just focus on the part that I want to do, which is performing, right? So I kind of created myself a list. I'm like, okay, what do I want to do to get more performances? I just need to write to places, maybe look into an agent, put things up for my social media. It's like a completely different set of tasks, but I realized I'm way more excited about doing those tasks than the other ones. And I'm kind of like thinking, I'm going to lean into this, systems kind of thing, building a cool system for myself. In Atomic Habits is kind of talking about it. And I was kind of like, I'm going to create a penny jar. And every time I do like an hour of practice, I'm going to put like a pound coin into a jar. Or like the paper clips thing. I haven't really exactly decided, but something like analogous to that of I'm gonna like cross off or something on a chart or put like a pound coin into a jar and then I have to like save £100 or something. Um, and yeah, since I kind of made that decision, I'm just like I'm enjoying this a lot more because the system is I'm doing something which I want to do rather than being like procrastinating. I don't want to do this. Oh, this is so boring. These people they owe me money and I don't know how to like chase them up for it. It's like it's kind of awkward. Like, you owe me money, all this stuff. It's like, just like I'm gonna try and focus on the thing that makes me happy and makes me feel positive and yeah, rather than trying to build systems that I'm actually deep down kind of resistant to, I want to focus on building the systems around the thing that is really me flourishing. And I can always come back to the piano teaching thing in the future, but as long as I'm stifling myself, thinking, oh, I have to do this, I have to do this, I'm just stifling myself. I'm just blocking my own energy and creating so much resistance in myself. Um, yeah.
Man, you've met Lyndon and Sophie today. Sophie, Lyndon, meet Philip, Karen, Chris, myself. Yeah, we've known each other over 18 months now. Um, and so we've had the benefit of watching the trajectory and what you're wanting to really do. And man, every time you talk about performing, you speak with such clarity. You speak from a place of such clarity. Your voice changes. Your camera's a bit blurry today, but usually you light up as well, and I can see it, and I'm like, yes, there's, and that's the kind of energy that you feel in someone when there's that alignment, right? When there's that alignment and they're moving into that integrity place. Um, so I guess there's a couple of games that I'm going to throw them up at the wall, and absolutely feel free to think on them, play with them, discard them, whatever's useful. But I'll chuck some things at the wall. Um, Game number one is like, what systems would would get you performing more? Would basically just get you doing more of what you really want to be doing. And the second game is, what systems could help your teaching business run with as little input as possible? What could be automated? How could that thing be so streamlined? It takes up such little bandwidth. It just runs really, really nicely. You get your bills paid, but opens up as much bandwidth as possible to fucking go out there and do your piano meditations.
Is that a direct question or is that a homework exercise?
That is simply something that I've said, and do do with that what you will. They were words that came out of my mouth, and feel free to.
Well, I'll tell you what the systems for running my teaching business. That was kind of what I was working on, and I just realized that last week on Monday, I actually sat down. I think I did it for about 3 hours, trying to improve the systems, and then I think I burnt myself out rather than being like, right, I don't want to do this anymore. I'd done like 3 hours. I wrote to a bunch of parents. Some of them replied, some of them didn't reply. Like, I have to be conscious of my creative energy. And if I stifle myself, then I'm just going to get like brain foggy and bored of it. So I think that system should be like, be aware of my energy. And like, if I'm like, okay, I feel like I can do some bills today. I can do like 2 hours of bills today. Okay, cool. Do it. But if like day two, day three, day four is not going, don't keep trying to push yourself. Like maybe tomorrow I'll do it. Maybe tomorrow. It's like at that point, it's like, what systems could we get you to performing more? I'm learning two really cool pieces of music. I've been learning for the last 2 weeks, and like every day, 3 or 4 times a day, I sit down to improve them. And like that's like the highlight of my day. It's like, oh, I'm so glad I practiced like 3 or 4 times, and they're just getting better and better and better. And what the systems are is building up that repertoire, and the repertoire is already building up. It's like now it's like almost 2 hours of music. Yeah.
Legend.
Thank you for allowing me to share about that.
No, man, thank you for thank you for sharing that. And another quick one I'll underline there. I love the bit in this where he talks about willpower, or I think it's Trevor is writing this segment and he calls it will force. And that system of like, oh, you just white knuckle it, like get through it. It's like, and with a lot of these things, I don't view these things in the book as either or. I view it as both and. It's all part of the palette. Like, are there certain situations that require a human being to grit their teeth? Yes. Like that's unavoidable in life. And applying that as a system for a very short term, I'm thinking of certain gigs and gigging situations where it's like, I just have to fucking grit my teeth and do this thing. Cool. But being conscious of applying that as like, right, I'm going into white knuckle mode and I'm going to consciously come out the other end of that when it's appropriate and it's done. But yeah, that will force as a go-to, like, right, white knuckle this thing, white knuckle it today, tomorrow, the next day. That's where it becomes like, okay, there's more available on the palette than just I'm going to force myself to live my life. So yeah, thank you, Philip, for that. Shit, just in the time. I need a system for that. Karen.
I really just wanted to say something to Philip, and I don't want to be coachy, but it sounded like you were using the oh no about the payments and chasing them up as I need to get away from that to do my music, when really just do your music and you can do that, but have some really lovely systems that just work on their own. And I've got children, so I am one of the parents that you may have been, I'm not, but but I could be. And with swimming, it's paid termly in advance. That's it. You have to give a term's notice. So pay termly in advance. There's the bill, you have to pay it by that date, or you don't come. With dancing, it's collected monthly. It's split across the year. It's collected monthly. It goes on my credit card. I don't have to think about it. Takes all the pressure off me. There's several hundred children. She couldn't possibly manage that. And some parents, they mean well, but they just forget to pay. It's totally all right to just put them on an automatic program. It's one less thing for them. And then you've got a system that works. And if you decide to create a more of a playing world, then you do that because you want to play, not because you can't be asked for the payment of the bloody parents, bastards that don't respond to the emails. And there's always going to be some of those. And I've been, as a therapist, have done that, and it's horrible asking for money. So now they pay up front or they don't get seen. It's simple as that. They book in, you whop them an invoice, and then they pay, and then you confirm that they're in or whatever. Like there's ways to take all of the nastiness out of asking for money. That's all I wanted to say. Sorry. You may not want to hear it.
It's no, it's true. It's true, Karen. If I'll just say to that, yes, there are systems, and yes, I've got the whole prepayment thing, but like I'm just going through my like 2025. Somebody just didn't pay in February, and I'm like, payment, no payment, 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 payment. Like January, March, April, May. It's like you didn't pay in February. The fee is, it's like, then they don't reply to the message for like a week, and I've got like, a couple of instances of that, and just. It's small things, but like when you've got 20 clients like that, and I'm the administrator and the teacher, it just stacks up. It just stacks up. But I understand what you mean. I understand what you mean. It should be simple. It is simple, but it's a system you have to maintain. The way I could maybe streamline it is by having more like I don't know. I'm trying to systematize it, but I don't know. It takes time. It takes time, I guess. Yeah.
I think you can just own it. This is how I work. This is how I work. It doesn't have to be hard. I know it feels hard. It doesn't have to be.
Awesome. Something to play with. I'm conscious of the time. Let's hear from Chris, and then we'll call it a day.
I'm conscious of the time too, but one thing I've discovered, and I'll offer to for whoever it's useful to hear it, that I've used the phrase adulting a lot when describing all of these bullshit tasks, filling out online forms, having to call insurance agencies, doctors' offices, all that stuff. And I realized, that putting that language to it is not helping me. It's not, it's implying that grown-up shit, I don't want to do, I want to play. I just want to play. So I decided instead just to refer to it as admin, another term that I've used, but has zero emotional charge. And also when seeing notifications come in of things that I have to follow up on, or looking at my things to do the day that I don't really want to do, it's just like, what needs to happen today? Let's just do those and move forward. But my point is the language is very powerful. So however we look at it, or white knuckling, I think that phrase was used a couple of times too. That to me, I feel like there might be some version of that it's part of stepping back, saying, whoa, and also knowing ourselves and showing some compassion and some self-love, and saying, oh, I know what my mind is doing. But I'm not gonna I don't need to go there. It's just what it is, and I'm gonna pick some things today, and that's it. Lastly, I'm so glad that we get back to the place of acceptance and self-love, and right back to Lyndon saying, sharing that that first step in the program for people is maybe just a way of sort of acknowledging the situation and then being able to take it from there. But I really I really love all of that or Karen, you shared the story about your friend whose flat was broken into, and there's a place for, like, why me? That was my story. But then I try to steer myself these days to, well, why not me? This is just a random thing that happened. I had no control over it. I had no choice here, but I'm going to choose a response instead, and a way of looking at it that's maybe where I can take it easy on myself a little bit. So that just a couple of loose thoughts there. Thanks, folks.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Awesome. What I will do, I'll put the playlist together. I'll send you all the link for that as well. So replays will go up there. As I mentioned to all of you, feel free to use the replays however you want. You can watch sessions back. If there are any sessions you can't make, you can watch it back there. You can give these away to people if you've got a friend that you think would find listening to one of these conversations useful. If you've got a client that would find it useful, please feel free to share them. That's it. Lots of love. I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you so much, Will.
Okay.
Pleasure to meet you guys.
Thanks, Will.